Ahoy, everyone! My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we try to my mouth not working.
The filth.
The filth! In this filth!
The filth of every filmmaker.
This filth! In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Joe Wright, and today we come to the end of our journey to talk about his period musical, Cyrano, and see if we are brave enough to confess our love for one another. Nick, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm loving it madly.
You loving it madly? Where I fall is heaven. That's what I'll say.
Where I podcast is
oh, God, so good, Nick. I should have just said that. Where I podcast, it's heaven. So here we are at the end of our journey with Joe Wright. 9 films. We're capping it with the 2021, correct? 2021 Cyrano, or is it 2022? 2021, I was right. I should have trusted.
2021, although
I should have trusted my instinct.
Didn't make wide release until 22, but there was a lot of issues that prevented that.
Well, let's be fair. When it came away, I feel like it coming out in wide release probably was more of a hindrance than a help for this movie. But this is a 2021 musical based on the obviously famous novel Cyrano de Bergerac. It stars Peter Dinklage and Haley Bennett, Kevin Harrison Jr., Ben Mendelsohn, Monica Dolan, and Bashir Salhuddin. And it is it's a musical based that was written by the music was written by the National, right? The National.
Yes.
I always get the National and the 1979 crossed up in my mind.
Oh wow, and they're nothing alike.
I know, but for whatever reason, they're both I will say this. They're both Taylor Swift adjacent for different reasons.
That's true, and they both kind of were huge at the same time, so I could sort of see it. Well, I guess in 1975 were a little bigger, but
she dated the guy from the 1975, and
right.
The Dressners have written music with her. So it's a weird crossover with the two.
I got you. I know you're a Swiftie, and
I'm a Swiftie. Yes.
Were we on mic talking about that?
I don't remember
Taylor Swift conversation.
No, I think it was after. I think it was after when we were kind of figuring out how we were watching Cyrano and all that kind of stuff, and talking about the Dressners being, involved in it. Written by Erica Schmidt. She wrote the book along with Edmund, based on the Edmund Rostand. Is that how you say his name? Novel?
I believe so. And she is the wife of Peter Dinklage.
The wife of Peter Dinklage. And I guess Haley Bennett, not the wife of Joe Wright, but a partner of Joe Wright's?
He cheated on his wife with her, and now they have a child together and live in England. And Joe Wright being the upstanding guy we thought, and look, not our business, right?
No.
Things happen in relationships. Yeah, kind of an illegitimate start, I guess we could say, to the Haley Bennett-Joe Wright relationship. But it's kind of interesting, right? We've got the spouses or partners of two of the key people here involved in this film. Yeah, music by the National. I guess I like the National, but I'm not a big enough fan to know if that's the whole band.
Me neither.
It's the Dessner brothers and that Matt Berninger, who is, I believe, the lead singer and writes the lyrics and wrote the lyrics for this with his wife, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's one more guy in the band, at least maybe even 2, but we'll just say it's the National. We'll just say it's most of the National.
Yeah. I mean, when you read about this movie, it basically says music by the National. Is basically what it says. Stage version only had 2 productions.
One of them right here in Connecticut at the Goodspeed. I saw the name and I was like, oh, the Goodspeed Opera House. That must be the better, bigger place and a place more interesting than Connecticut that the Goodspeed Opera House in Connecticut takes its name from. But no, it's actually here. I don't know about you, dude, but if I had known that Peter Dinklage was going to be starring in this musical, that's about a half hour from where I live, I totally would have gone to that.
100%. Yeah.
Very, very, very low key thing. Yeah, I did do one off Broadway show also. I didn't know any of this. I mean, I saw the movie and I researched it, and I actually thought this was just an original, let's make a movie with music by the National. And so.
I wonder too, again, we don't know, right? But sometimes these type of things are made with the intention of them being a movie at some point, and they're just sort of trying to make it a existing thing so that it's easier to make it into a movie.
Yeah, and it was only a couple years before, so there's
Yeah.
probably some thought. I mean,
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage is not known as
Exactly.
a Broadway actor, but
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why
I'd go
it
see him on
feels
stage. I still would.
absolutely would. Absolutely would. And I think this is probably what it was. This is an MGM release, the last movie they put out before they got acquired by Amazon. Is it this movie's fault? Who knows? But it certainly was not a money maker. We'll just say that it's part of this Joe Wright like weird financial, I guess, burden that he puts on studios when he makes movies, which
Another
is
$30 million movie.
Yeah.
Another handsomely mounted $30 million movie. That is his target budget. Classic literature is a thing that he is pretty well versed in. This feels very much, I mean, I will get to our thoughts on the quality of the movie in a little bit, but just the idea that after The Woman in the Window, he goes back and he does something like that. I know that was a long, troubled production. This was more, a very quick production and then kind of a troubled release schedule due to COVID and stuff like that. But it feels like, Joe Wright kind of back in Joe Wright world, whereas The Woman in the Window was Joe Wright trying to be Hitchcock and De Palma and John Waters and God knows who else.
Yeah. John Waters. Wow.
Camp.
Yes, I know, but
heavy camp.
Yes.
Is that insulting to John Waters?
I think a little bit, yeah.
That's fair.
John Waters doesn't hide the camp at all. John Waters is just full on. Really quick.
Someone should have eaten dog shit in The Woman in the Window. I think it would have maybe improved that movie a little.
Really quick aside about John Waters. This is really random. So my son was singing I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys the other day. And I was like, oh, there's this really funny opening to the show I love that does that song. And there's this really funny Brooklyn Nine-Nine cold open where he has the lineup of criminals singing I Want It That Way, Sandberg's character. And we're watching it and he thinks it's really funny and he wants to know what else Andy Samberg has done. So I very selectively showed him a couple of Lonely Island videos.
Oh,
and
The Creep, right? Dude, Creep?
And he loved a couple of them. He's like, what else? He's like, what's this one, The Creep? And I put it on and that starts with a John Waters.
That's right.
Thing. So it's just really random that we brought up John Waters today. But, back to this movie, like you said, it's funny, we talked about last time Woman in the Window feeling almost like a COVID core movie by the way it was produced and how actors aren't really in the same place a lot of the time and the staging feels a little bit like they're intentionally separating them from each other. And it wasn't a COVID movie. This very much is a COVID movie, and it's a movie that he decided to make during COVID. They went to Sicily to make the movie, and under COVID restrictions, and it gets released, obviously, very quickly after it gets made, when movie theaters are still not really fully open yet. And obviously that probably is part of the reason why the movie is doomed from the start. People aren't going to the movies that much, and they're especially not going to go to the movies to see a, Cyrano de Bergerac musical, right? That's not what people are running out to go see.
Not that Peter Dinklage is not a draw, not that he can't open a movie, but he might not be able to open a movie.
Yeah, he's not a movie star, right? He's a very well-liked actor, very famous actor, especially because of Game of Thrones, right? But not someone who really has been tested in the movie space as far as leading something on his own. If this comes out in 2019 or this comes out in 2024 or 2023, I think it probably makes $25 million. You know what I mean? And probably $40 million worldwide, $50 million worldwide, makes its money back. And it's not this kind of financial disaster that also no one knows exists.
This is like an Oscar season prestige pick. And again, I don't want to get into whether it's any good or not yet. We will, but this feels definitely like one of those kinds of movies. Gets nominated for Golden Globes, which it was for a few, and has a couple technical Oscar nominations and things like that. But it's a handsomely mounted production based on classic literature. It's a musical. I mean, it's a grown-up movie for kind of a grown-up audience. And, these things, as if theaters weren't suffering enough. I mean, what are people going out to see? Halloween Kills, I think, did really good that time. But, I think you're going to have a much harder time with something like this, where particularly that audience, this is definitely geared toward an older audience, and COVID was geared toward killing older people, so so they weren't going to the movies much during that time. I'm glad that time is over.
Obviously.
Kind of reminded me, just reading about the box office failure of this and the fact that it was delayed in the UK. That was a shitty time to be a movie fan.
Absolutely. And also, it's a movie that I don't think obviously MGM had its struggles for many years before it gets bought by Amazon. Doesn't have a strong promotional arm that's really promoting the movie. I didn't even know this movie happened until a year or so ago, so it's that's also part of the problem, right? So the movie comes out, does very poorly, but I think
It made the box office top 10. It was ninth.
Yeah, that's, you don't want to open. You don't want to start at
Uncharted
9.
was number 1.
Yeah, you don't want to start at 9. That's not where you want to open.
No,
matter what
it did
you
make
are.
it up to 8th, and the Batman opened the week later.
Yeah,
So, that's pretty stiff competition there. So.
Yeah, a lot of crossover between the Batman and Cyrano. I think what I will say is, I guess we should do this. Let's just put, cards on the table as far as how we felt about this movie. Nick, we really haven't talked about it at all, other than just like a couple of texts about the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
So I have really no idea how you felt about it. And you have no idea how I felt about it. What were your thoughts overall on this movie?
Surprisingly, I absolutely love this movie.
Cool.
And we were talking about, we're going to rank our Joe Wright films later, and this was a really hard one to place for me because I do think it's, if this is not his best movie, I do feel like, one, it's up there with his best, and two, it feels just like a thing that he was kind of born to do, and I just, there's a lot of things about it that I think work really well. There's a couple of things that disappointed me, or a couple of things that kind of frustrated me, but I'm not a musicals guy at all. I do, I do enjoy some musical films. I love Singing in the Rain, for example. Moulin Rouge.
Right.
I tend to kind of like that kind of stuff a little bit more. But I thought the music for this was great. Mostly. There's one that I just want to erase from my memory forever. But I think I do like the National a lot, and the music in this does kind of sound like the National.
Yeah.
They don't sound like show tunes, the songs in this, and I don't feel like they're intrusive. And one of the critics I was reading about this said that though Joe Wright had never done a musical up to this point, so many things in his films, like the dance sequences in Pride and Prejudice.
We've been saying this for weeks at this point.
Yeah. I mean, he's so good at choreography, and he incorporates music, even if it's not the characters performing the music into the movie so well, that it's like, how has this guy not made a musical? And I feel like when he got his chance to do it, like, this really feels so much like a Joe Wright movie, that needed to happen. And right from the get-go, I love this. The opening shot of this movie, there's puppets, and we actually see a puppet theater out on the street a little bit later on. And going back to our first episode on him, like, that's the world he comes from, right? His parents owned a puppet theater. I learned later that those puppets we see in that beautiful opening shot were made by his dad. So this feels like a very personal movie to him. Also with Haley Bennett, the woman in his life, being kind of the major role in this. I mean, she is the star of this, I guess, if Dinklage is not.
Well, Dinklage is the star of it for sure, I think. But yes,
well, but
she's the co-lead for sure.
She's the
yes,
co-lead.
Yes,
there,
absolutely.
That's absolutely the word I was looking for, which is a very simple term that I couldn't find. But I do feel like this was a movie that he really kind of put his heart and soul into, maybe a lot more than the last movie he made. And this was supposed to be kind of a return to form for him. And it really feels like it. And as much as I was getting a little bit sick of the Joe Wright style when he did it in Darkest Hour, I was really happy to see it come back. And I really think this was a great project to apply it to. So yeah, I like this movie a lot. In fact, the more I talk about it, the more I think about it. I think it's gone up a little bit in my rankings. So I'm going to probably piss you off later.
No, I don't think you'll piss me off. I mean, I think I really liked this movie. I was hoping that I would come in here and be like, his best movie bar none. And it's not that for me, but
no, I don't think that either, but it's real good.
It's very good.
I expected kind of nothing out of it. Based on even the critical reception for this was kind of muted. It's got like a 66 on Metacritic. There are some critics that had some pretty harsh things to say about it.
I mean, I think it's a movie that, it's easy for critics to pick on, right? And I think that I can see why that would happen. But for me, I think I think it looks beautiful. Let's start right there. And I think I am so happy, after doing these 9 movies, that I've come to this realization about Joe Wright, that he is a little bit of a crazy person in the fact that he does stuff like this that other directors who doesn't have the cachet that big, huge directors have, right? But he continues to try to take these swings, even if they're projects that he didn't originate, or he's coming to them at a certain point, or they find him. He takes big swings, and he doesn't tend to make the same movie or the same even style of movie more than once, right? And sometimes that leads to a miss, but it often leads to stuff that's very interesting, right? This could have easily been a lot more Pride and Prejudice, right? It could have, or it could have been a lot more Anna Karenina, right? Because it could have really embraced the stageness of being a musical, right? And I think it would have probably played and worked really well in that style, right? But it's not, right? It's shot in a different way, and sort of like it has this sort of Joe Wright thing that we come to much like in the Atonement, right? It's kind of like a movie that's of two parts, right? But I think even that second part that's more war focused in Cyrano is nothing like the Atonement part, right? In many ways, you know. So I think it's very interesting how he tends to circle these big literature adaptations, but feels like he really tries to do something different, you know, every time he kind of dives into them, right? So it's not just, oh, he's doing the thing that he did the first time over again, you know. And I appreciate that how he makes movies. Also, he went to Sicily during COVID and made a big ass basically original musical. You know, it's like, that's not something a lot of directors are going to do, you know, in this time and space. And I really appreciate it for that. I also appreciate that it's an unapologetically romantic movie. I think that's great.
It's super hard on sleeve stuff, and I love that.
Yeah,
I really enjoy that. And those locations, my God.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm all Italian. I'm like about 2/3 or about half Sicilian, and I've never been, but these places that he found in this movie, like what a beautiful place to shoot a movie. Reminds me a lot of really, really great movie Tarsem Singh's The Fall, where he's got these incredible, you know, they look like fantasy locations. They look like sets, but like he was doing commercials at the time, Tarsem Singh, and just found these incredible places all over the world. It's like, all right, let's set a scene here. And this felt like kind of that just for Sicily. And there's this one moment, it's like the garrison where the guards are stationed, Cyrano and his guys there, and it's like an abandoned castle or something. I don't know what this place is, but there's this incredible overhead, like bird's eye aerial shot of it. It's right on the ocean. I mean, just to see that in a movie, you know, it's like what he did in Hanna with that water bridge that I was all obsessed with.
Yeah, you were very obsessed with that water bridge.
Oh man, I love a good water bridge.
Yeah.
But you know, I like that eye that he has, you know, for things like that. I mean, he's obviously very good. We talked about Anna Karenina, where he built a theater and kind of shot the whole thing there. But this is the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very, like you said, it's a very theatrical film, and I think the Anna Karenina approach could have really worked for this.
Yeah.
They could have shot it at the Goodspeed Opera House. Instead of that, what they did was, you know, try to make this feel like it's in the real world by shooting in real world locations. And just really, I mean, this movie, whether you like the movie or not, it's incredible to look at all the way through, like most of his movies are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, like he's often very big about creating the sets or the places that he's shooting. Like he does it in Woman in the Window as well. That's a whole set they built just because he wanted to look a certain way. And doing it this way, I think, was you said, like a different way of going about this, right? And I think that's very cool. I, for the most part, think the songs are very good. You know, my real quibbles with it come more from, if you're going to make a musical movie, right? There's a couple bars you have to clear, I think, for it to validate itself as needing to be musical instead of just being a more straight adaptation, right? And one of the things is, could you do this on the stage or could you not, right? And I feel like there are just a few too many times in this movie where it's like just a person sitting in a room. It's like, honestly, a very reserved filmmaking style, like a close-up shot of them, static shot of them, and they're just singing, right? And if you're like, I think, a spectacular singing talent, sometimes that can carry those type of scenes. The people in this movie, while they are expressive musical theater singing, are not what I would call like spectacular singers, right? So they're not like traditionally what you would think of as like powerful voices. So sometimes I think some of those scenes.
You mean you wouldn't listen to a Ben Mendelsohn pop album if he was to drop one?
No, definitely not.
I would, just because. Not because it would be good, but I love Ben Mendelsohn.
Just for the kitsch value of it. But I think that, you know, and I think that sometimes that minimalist approach works really, really well, and we'll talk about it as we go to some of those scenes. But other times I think it sucks some of the energy out of the movie when the energy should be coming up because they are singing, right? And I think like that is one of the things I think it doesn't quite clear of a bar, which is interesting when you talk about Joe Wright, because you would assume that would be the opposite problem, right? Yeah. That it would be so showy, you would be like, Joe, come on, just let's scale it back a little bit. And it's sometimes I feel like he's intentionally, and I think he does this a lot, we've talked about this a lot, being like, how would people expect me to do this? I'm going to do it differently, you know, and there's definitely benefits of doing that, and I applaud that in some ways, but in other ways, sometimes you got to, Joe, just let it fly a little bit here. This is the time where you can let it fly. You're doing a musical. So that was the part I think kind of held me back a little bit from just being like, I just love this, because sometimes I was like, I would almost rather right now them just be talking than them singing, right? And that's, I am a musical guy. Like, I love musicals to death, but in some of those moments I was like, these songs are good, but they could just be talking right now and the scene would not really be too different. But it does do a good job, and I'll come back to you about this, of most of the time, the songs come at the point in a musical where they're supposed to come, where it's like the emotions are so big, or the things are so, there are things that people can't say out loud, so they sing them instead. That's what the whole point of a musical is, like, instead of, when the emotions are too big, they sing, right? That's like what happens, and it happens a lot in this movie, and I think it's really, really well staged. I think also, like, the performances across the board are really, really good in this movie.
Good, yeah.
And Dinklage, it's just as an actor I love. He's got one of the most expressive faces in modern like visual format, whatever, TV, movies, whatever it is, and he really sells so much of this movie for me. But sorry, I was talking about the musical numbers, and I think you wanted to jump in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am not a musical guy the way you are, and I really liked actually the way they were integrated here. It's a little jarring at first. So we get the Roxanne character played by Haley Bennett. She jumps into a carriage with DeGuiche, Ben Mendelsohn's character.
Yeah, Benny's back.
Like, yeah, it's good to see him again. I love that guy, as I was saying. And when she started singing at the beginning, like, I forgot this was even a musical. I kind of went into this very cold, and I was like, what the hell is happening here? And it's like one of the weakest songs in the movie that kind of starts it off. And I was like, oh, we're doing this. I don't think I'm going to like this movie at all. And by the end, Heaven is Where I Fell, whatever, that song at the end of the movie, I was like, oh man, I'm going to listen to like all of the, except for one. We'll get to that one later. But I like the music in this because they don't feel, as I said, they're certainly not show tunes. They're not flashy the way show tunes are. And there's a lot of instrumental music. Like, I think it's really interesting the way most of these songs, they have like just a verse or two. And it's like late in the song. Like, if you listen to the soundtrack of this on Spotify and you're waiting to hear these non-actors sing, you got to wait a while. And the scenes kind of build. And then finally we get some singing. And then actually the way the song goes out is like this extended kind of outro underneath a very dramatic scene, which I thought was really, really interesting. And as much as you're right that none of these people are great singers, Matt Berninger from The National has a really interesting voice too. It's very, very deep, but not in like a whiskey-fueled Tom Waits kind of way. And it kind of reminded me a lot of that, and I like that. It just felt a little bit grittier, and it's just more, I'm not a show tunes guy, I've never seen a musical where it's like I want to listen, like a stage musical where it's like these are songs that I want to listen to, in the car on the way to work. And I absolutely listened to the soundtrack for this movie in the car on the way to work yesterday and today. So.
Yeah. And I should say, I want to clarify, it's not because they're not show tuney that I feel this way about I like the songs, and I like plenty of musicals that aren't show tuney, right? That are more like this. I just feel it's much more just about the staging or the blocking of the scenes than it is the songs themselves, because I don't even. Yes,
I think that suits the music in this movie.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is, like, I don't need big dance numbers. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, like that opening scene. We should say, if people don't know the story of Cyrano de Bergerac, it is about this man traditionally in the book, and he has like a giant nose. Like, that's the thing that makes him unlovable or whatever.
We all learned that story from the movie Roxanne, which I think I don't know if I've ever actually even seen all of that movie, but if you had cable in the late 80s, early 90s, that movie was part of your life, whether you cared about it or not. And I definitely didn't, but
I saw that movie on cable when I was a kid, maybe 15 times.
I saw bits and pieces of it, probably the same. But I just wasn't interested in seeing the entire thing, which I should have been, because Steve Martin's amazing.
So it's about this not traditionally, handsome, strapping guy who has been in love with this woman named Roxanne for a very long time. And this other man shows up who's kind of like handsome, strapping man who they love at first sight, but he's kind of like a little bit stupid, or whatever. So he doesn't really have the words.
He doesn't express himself as well. Yeah, Cyrano is amazing with the pen and amazing with his sword.
Yes, and also amazing just
duelist.
Speaking, right? So, and he sort of like he basically starts writing letters for this guy Christian to her, and then even speaks for him at one point in one scene. And she falls in love with him. They get married, but then they get sent. Then Cyrano and this guy who are both in a guard unit get sent to war, and some tragedy befalls them, and so like that's what it's about. It's an unrequited love story. It's one of these sort of proto like, oh, I'm just the nice guy that she doesn't notice because I don't look like the jock. It's like an 80s teen movie basically, but written in whatever year this was written. I don't even know. So that's basically what it is. And Peter Dinklage plays Cyrano de Bergerac. So in this version, he's a small person instead of someone with
dwarfism than a giant, ridiculous-looking nose, which I think is a worthwhile choice.
Absolutely, it is.
I did not want makeup effects in this movie, and
no.
and it doesn't have any.
And if he had a big nose in this movie, it would become very, very hat on a hat sort of situation.
Yeah. Not that I don't think Peter Dinklage would be a lot of fun with a huge nose.
No, I think he absolutely would be. Absolutely. He doesn't need it though in this movie. So there's the opening scene is Roxanne kind of going to. Actually, the opening scene is very, again, Pride and Prejudice-y, where it's like, there's a rich guy who wants to marry you. She doesn't want to marry him because she wants to marry for love. The guy is like, a rich duke who's kind of gross, but she goes to the theater with him because she can't afford the tickets otherwise, and she's like, I might as well just go. He's not gonna leave me alone. I might as well just go.
Theater's a big event in this movie.
Very big event.
Next time I don't get out to the theater much, but the next time I do, I'm going to start a chant where everybody's going, play, play, play. It's like, did people do that?
I have no idea. I mean, theater used to be a lot different, right? And I think that, and so this opening scene is sort of her in this carriage, like Nick was saying, and she begins to sing like her feelings, like, I want to be in love, basically, is what the song is. It's like an I want song, in like musical theater terms.
There's this great line. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, I guess I'll credit it to Erica Schmidt because I'm not going to read the Roxanne novel.
You're not going to read Cyrano de Bergerac?
Yeah, but she's upper class, but she's not wealthy. So she's looking for love, and her, like, Marie, who is her, like, she's an orphan. So this woman, Marie, kind of looks after her. And Marie says to her, children need love, adults need money. And I was like, ooh, that's a big one to drop on me.
That feels like a line from a book.
60 seconds, 90 seconds into this movie is like, I want to pause this and think about that. What a profound line that is.
It's very Maid Marian and the Nurse, or that's what it feels like. Very Robin Hood in that way, And then
I didn't really understand the relationship, but that's fine.
But you're supposed to think
she's like a motherly figure.
Yeah, she's a mother. She's a mother stand-in, whether she's her biological mother or not. It's a mother stand-in. So this scene, right, where they're in the carriage, when this scene happened, I initially was a little bit worried because I was like, okay, she sings fine, and Haley Bennett has a fine voice. She probably has the strongest voice of the people who sing the most in the movie, right? The people, people who sing a lot in the movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
But again, she's just sitting in a carriage, sort of like looking out the window, singing, right? And I was like, okay, like again, like I'm saying, you could do this on a stage, right? And you would be exactly the same. You would have no difference to what the effect you're getting. The song opens up at the end, and then I was like, okay, I feel a little bit more like we're in safe hands. But, there's just things you can do with a number like that where it doesn't have to be lavish, but you can be in different places. You can be building up the scene, her getting ready, blah, blah, whatever, and and not just all just her sitting in one place. That's just an example.
You were mentioning the way it opens up. I mean, actually, I wasn't crazy about her singing in the carriage either, and I think maybe part of that was just because I remember how amazing that carriage scene in Anna Karenina is.
Oh yeah,
with Jude Law and Keira Knightley, and I was like, oh man, don't try to outdo that, Joe. Right? You can't. That scene's amazing. But they get to the theater, and like everyone like is walking in singing the same song, and I was like,
great.
Okay, that's a movie thing. You're right. I mean, but like I think that's the point, right? Like he's setting you up to not expect, and then it comes as such a shock or a surprise when he does it there.
And you're like Joe Wright, because when that scene, when that moment happens, it's
but
Joe
like
Wright
the opening
scene.
shot of this movie, so with the puppets were in the closet in Roxanne's apartment or whatever,
it is.
And then this like wonderful dolly movement right to left where we see the entirety of the place. Very Pride and Prejudice also. I was like, oh yeah, this is a Joe Wright movie. 5 seconds in, and we know exactly who made this.
Yeah, but I think this, like, once they get to the theater, it's big and lavish, and you have.
That sequence is so fun.
It's so fun, and you're meeting all your main characters right at the top, right? You've got Roxanne, you've got the Duke, you meet Christian, right, on the streets. You can tell he doesn't have a lot of money. He has just enough money to like get like a ticket to the show or whatever, and then quickly after that you meet Cyrano, right, which is this actor goes on stage, and then in a very Phantom of the Opera-esque moment, and I guess this must be from the book, right? But like, he basically is like, basically insults him off the stage and then pays for the whole theater, basically. And
immediately likable. I also like, you know, so many things as well, like incredible production design. What is this play? So there's like people dressed like sheep, and then this like famous actor comes out. I guess he's supposed to be the king, but he's kind of dressed like a clown or a jester, and you know, he's this pompous asshole. And what a fun scene. I was like, why are people paying to see this? He's supposed to be like the most famous actor in the world. There's a guy, an older guy in the audience, and he's there with his son. He's like, you're about to see greatness on the stage here. And clearly this guy has a very high opinion of himself, and Cyrano kind of brings him down in a way that's a lot of fun. He kind of heckles him before we see him, and everyone's, you know, kind of whispering about Cyrano, and we get, before we actually see Peter Dinklage, there's this kind of build up to his entrance, and it's a really great character entrance. It is a
great character entrance, great character introduction, and you know, Dinklage is good at a lot of things. He's especially good at this kind of thing. This like sort of like super intelligent takedown of somebody else.
Sarcasm.
You know?
I'm a great appreciator of sarcasm. I love Tyrion Lannister. I wasn't crazy about a lot of seasons of that show, but when he was on screen, it was like, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, you're like, I'm in safe hands with this guy when he's doing this stuff, right? And it's a great introduction for him. And, you know, but we go right into something I did not expect or did not know, because I don't know, the only version of the story I know is the Steve Martin version.
Roxanne,
You know, so somebody dies in the first 10 minutes of this movie, which is kind of crazy, which I did not expect, right? And then, again, setting up that Cyrano is this really skilled swordsman, right? This guy challenges him to a duel, and Cyrano isn't going to kill him, but the guy
who looks exactly like Nicholas Hoult in Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, it's really
why, but he does.
Yeah, and you know, he's part of the Duke's
retinue.
Retinue, that's the word. That's what I was trying to think of. The Duke's retinue.
Word. Yep,
it's a great word. And
incorporate that into conversation if you can. Probably can.
And you know, he duels him, and Cyrano wins while doing a kind of takedown rap, which I'm sure that's the song you want to talk about.
It's so bad. Yeah,
I don't even think it's. Here's my disagreement with you. I don't think. Here's why I kind of like it. Okay, I don't love it. I'm not gonna say like I would like listen to the song in my car.
No, please make a case for this, please.
But Cyrano is a poet, right? That's kind of like what his deal is, right? He's a poet, and to me, this is like them trying to communicate that in this movie, right? And how do you do that in a modern sense? He raps, right? That's like what it is. So he's just kind of like spitting lines of verse at this guy while he sword fights him.
But they're terrible. Like, right, like Cyrano is a poet. Like I would like, if the lyrics were good, I could almost say, but like this feels like Lin-Manuel Miranda does this thing, so we can do it too. And like,
there's a lot of Hamilton-esque to that.
I'm not that. I've never seen Hamilton, and I've heard some of the songs, and like, I understand the style because it's a very distinctive style, and this feels just like a very naked attempt to
it does feel like that. I'm wondering if it's actual lines from the book. I'm wondering, like, not that would make it better or worse, but I'm just saying.
I thought the book was supposed to be good.
But anyway, he kind of spits bars at him, and
it's staged very poorly too. I mean, the way they're like clashing their swords together, like it's supposed to kind of punctuate. But like, Joe Wright, you know how to do that, dude. You made music out of a typewriter in Atonement, so why is this so tone deaf and so ugly? And it's just awful. I was like, if this is where this movie is going, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the rest of it. And by the end, I was like, I love this movie. So it did recover its footing fairly good. It's the only song that's like this. All the rest of the music, I think, is really, really good.
And he wins this duel against this guy, and he's kind of like, okay, like the guy submits, but then the guy's like, you know, his pride, and he runs after him, and he's going to kill him, and instead Cyrano kills.
Roxanne shouts out.
Yes,
and he sticks his sword in him. Yeah, and a lovely moment too when the guy is dying and Cyrano kind of comforts him.
Yeah, this is a really nice moment.
Shows you kind of who he is.
Again, just another thing that Dinklage is so good at is he switches from this like pompous sort of, you know, confidence to this very vulnerable, very open thing so fast. But it's so believable, right? It feels organic, right? It feels like you really believe this guy did not want to kill this guy. That's not anything he wanted to do in this moment. And it was just like, I had to do this, and I'm not going to like kill you and then like walk away or say
Kind
some
of embraces him while his sword is like sticking through him and says something like, it'll all be over soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was a really nice moment. And then, and then we kind of learn in the next moment, or the next scene. Again, this is so funny. This is our third movie with what's his name? With Bashir, the guy because he was in Pan and he's also in Top Gun Maverick. He's like,
oh yeah, I was like, was he in another Joe Wright movie? Because I enjoyed seeing him again in this because he was so underused in Pan. I was like, well, we talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
Like this guy with great screen presence, and just kind of a nothing role. He's like just burly pirate guy.
Yeah.
Blackbeard's crew, whatever. And in this movie, he actually gets to do some stuff, and he's kind of Cyrano's like confidant. He's like his best friend. Lebret is his name. Is captain of the guard. I enjoyed seeing him here. I think he's really good. I would like to see more of that guy. Supposed to be Brian Tyree Henry in that role, carrying over from The Woman in the Window. Well, no, because that was, I know the release schedule, but they were in order. This just came out.
Yeah, this came out very close to The Woman in the Window, even though Woman in the Window was made much earlier.
But like I was kind of looking for some Joe Wright regulars in this.
Yeah.
Again, where's your Tom Hollander here?
Well, that Ben Mendelsohn has taken his place, my friend.
I guess.
Because DeGuiche is definitely the role Tom Hollander would have played in this movie if Tom Hollander was in this movie. Yeah. Maybe.
Because Ben Mendelsohn has a certain energy that I don't know if Tom Hollander can do.
Yeah, but this definitely weird makeup, sort of shitty guy would definitely have been Tom Hollander.
But 100%. I do Bashir Salahuddin, I think his name is. And, he's really good in this. And
he's very good in this, yes.
After Pan, it was nice to see him kind of recover and do something decent. And who is he in Top Gun Maverick?
He's like Tom Cruise's like guy, like the guy at the beginning who's like when he's testing the plane.
That's him?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go back. I'll watch it again anyway. I love that movie. But okay, I guess I didn't even clock him in that movie.
Yeah. So he's in that movie as well. But this is when we learn that he's in love with Roxanne because they have like a nice like scene together or whatever. And again, the performance is so interesting to me because he's really going back and forth between like these two modes a lot. And even in this scene, he's going back and forth. And then when he really he realizes that sort of like he's been caught and this guy knows how he feels, right? He kind of turns into like a kid almost about it, And when the woman comes to say like, oh, Roxanne wants to meet with you in private tomorrow and all this stuff, he's like giddy, like a little kid about it. And like, where can I go? What can I do? What can I, where can I?
Farce stuff in this.
Yes.
There's a moment where he's like, Roxanne, she shows up, Roxanne.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I like that. I mean, it does it nicely. And Joe Wright has kind of done this before. He's very good at kind of balancing tones. And it's a complex piece of literature and kind of calls for that, and I think he does it really well. This movie, it will bring a tear to your eye, but also there's a lot of really nice lighthearted moments.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I mean, you mentioned that it's kind of two parts almost. The way Atonement is kind of 3 parts.
Yeah,
I guess that's probably true, but I mean, it's I think there's no lighthearted stuff toward the end, but there's kind of some more dramatic stuff in the beginning that really contrasts the.
Yeah, no, I just kind of mean that there's like there's these two very distinct settings, and they like I said, you were kind of hinting at the tones are very different. Even though there is like very dramatic stuff in the first part, it's much more like interpersonal dramatic, and then when we get to the war side of things, it's obviously more. War dramatic,
the violence in the first half is very swashbuckling, lighthearted. Where
feels almost like Errol Flynn type of stuff.
Throw the noose off the side of the stairs and drag him up. Very theatrical, but toward the end the violence is a little more hard hitting.
Yeah,
just very I feel like this movie is better than anyone really gave it credit for.
Oh, for sure,
it's doing a lot of things.
Except for Bilga. Bilga really liked. Bilga really liked it.
Bilga's a great critic. Yeah. He called it one of the most romantic movies ever made.
Yeah, I think that's what the pull quote said that you put in the doc. I think
that's strong praise. I'm not sure I'd go quite that far, but it tugged at my heartstrings, and this is not really my thing. So go Cyrano.
Yeah, I think so. That the next thing we really get is, this scene where they try to kill Cyrano, right? The Duke sends this 10 men or whatever.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage bests them all with his swordplay.
This scene I do think is well choreographed and works nicely. Yeah, this
reminds me a lot of the subway fight from Hanna.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dinklage is really good in it. You believe physically that, he's using, what he has to his advantage, right? And
we short people can kick ass too.
and I think it's really good. I think where I was like, I did not expect this. Like, I did not expect there to be like a big swashbuckling scene where Peter Dinklage fights 10 guys with a sword,
There's this great bit. It's, again, this amazing Joe Wright choreography. He stabs a guy, sticks a sword through someone. This guy's in the foreground, and then he realizes he needs the sword back.
Yeah.
So he yanks it out, and we see the body kind of flop down right in front. Like, it actually blocks the action for a second.
Yeah.
Really neat shot there. Again, does remind me a lot of that Eric Bana's character in Hanna, the way that sort of free-flowing. I'm not a Bourne series guy because I don't like the Paul Greengrass style of shooting a scene like this with like 10,000 shots and we see about a quarter second of all of them. I like long takes, and this kind of does it. It's really nice. You get to actually see the choreography set on this beautiful big staircase, outdoor staircase. Really, really fun scene. And yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. It's like, oh, this is turning into a fun little action flick for a while here.
I don't know why you have to throw strays at the Bourne franchise when we're talking about Cyrano. Cyrano can be good without something else being worse,
I'm just saying, like, there is a style of doing this kind of thing that I like a lot, and it's what we see here rather than that's just my go-to example for what I don't like.
A very relevant, modern example.
Sure.
Of the
Quantum of Solace. Can we talk about Quantum of Solace?
No, because that's also old, dude. That came out during when the Bourne movies were coming out.
I know.
You get that scene, and then the next scene we get is the scene where he's sort of like trying to prepare his thoughts about what he's going to say to Roxanne, right? And love this scene. You're talking
about the bakery.
The bakery. I love this scene.
Me too. Everything, this set is incredible. I never thought a back room full of sacks of flour could be beautiful, and the way Joe Wright shoots it, the light in the scene is absolutely gorgeous. The music in this scene is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love the bit. There's this old baker guy. He's like, I'm awake with the muse, and he's writing a poem, and Cyrano kind of talks him through, like, wait a minute, don't write about the planets and the stars. Write about something you know. And, you know, how baking something is like an act of love, this transcendent act of love. Really, really great stuff in this scene. And it's so Joe Wright. It's this is like prestige picks, I think, get a bad rep, and like this kind of movie says, we should have these, kind of haughty adult kind of movies. Like I enjoy this here,
but I also think this movie isn't, you might see on the surface and go like, oh, this is one of those movies, but I think like a lot of his movies, other than really Darkest Hour, right, which I think is much more straight, we're going to do a prestige pick, this is going to win Oscars, like type of thing.
Sure.
Even though, like we talked about in that episode, he does things in it, I think, elevate it above a lot of what those other movies are like. But this movie, you might see on the surface, like, oh, this is just one of those movies. But it's really not, because, like, there's a lot of not safe things happening here, or what he's doing, right? He's not playing it down the middle. If he really wanted to be like a play down the middle prestige pick, it wouldn't be a musical. Right, it would dive much more into like the physicality and like the way that people treat the Cyrano character because of his physical differences. The war stuff would have been much more, I think, drawn out and much more a big part of it, right? And I don't think you would have had this more like light tone a lot of the times, and these kind of risks that he takes, with how he stages some things and how some of the, and even the songs themselves, right? This is not like a big, it's not like they got Steven Schwartz or somebody, to write the music, right? These are essentially like, a rock band writing these songs. So I think, on the surface, it feels like a prestige pick, but I think in a lot of ways it's got a lot more going on than a lot of those movies end up having.
Oh man, I'm just talking about like who it's geared toward, right? Like who the audience for this is. It's the people who go see, the Oscar movies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So, but I think the scene's great. I think it's very charming, and
well, it's very charming until it isn't. There's a moment. So this is where we kind of learn where Roxanne, like he goes into this with this idea that she wants to meet with him. So they find what's the word that they is like, I need a private room, and the baker's like, what for an assignation?
Yeah.
I don't know what that word means, but I guess it means a place you can have sex with someone.
I'm guessing, because that's kind of what the tone was of that conversation.
Yeah, I've never heard assignation used in that way before.
Yeah.
I'm I'm trash from Waterbury, Connecticut, so we don't use big words.
I mean, this is a beautiful
Normally.
little side room that he's got with these bags of flowers. He's got a nice little table in the middle of it. It gets a lot of
It
natural
looks like
light.
a Renaissance painting. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, and it's literally just like the storeroom at a bakery.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this, this moment where, if you don't know the story, it's like, okay, Cyrano's going to confess his love here, and he's expecting her to confess it back, and she says she has a secret for, it's that very cliched,
Yes.
sort of thing that established in this
Oh,
kind
but
of
this
literature
dialogue
where
scene is so good between the
it's
two of them.
wonderful. Yeah. She's confessing her love for someone. I've fallen in love with someone, and he doesn't know that I'm in love with him, but,
Yeah.
and
I feel like I've known him forever, all those kind of things, and he thinks she's talking about him.
And when she kind of reveals to him, because he's very smart, right? Like it's not, she never says it overtly, but he figures it out.
Yeah.
And it's this moment. Peter Dinklage does such amazing acting with his eyes. I never, I'm not usually looking at his eyes and things before, because he is a kind of a showy actor. And there's this just his voice is really incredible, and he's very expressive with that stuff, with the dialogue. But there's this moment here where it's just a very silent shot of him, and you can just kind of see it in his face. Like, this is what the situation is. And I was like, how is this guy not nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars, not the Golden Globes Best Musical or Comedy, which he was. He didn't win.
Yeah.
What an incredible bit of performance.
Yes.
I've always liked him, but I think that's maybe the greatest moment I've seen of him in anything ever.
Yeah, he's got magic eyes. Like, he definitely does. Like, it's such expressive.
I never realized it before I saw him in this movie.
And you feel that pain so distinctly. And
this scene fucking broke me. And I was like, all right, movie, I'm on board. I've forgotten the rap thing entirely, and I'm like right back where I need to be.
And there are very few actors who can play, or who can kind of get across that they are an intelligent person just from kind of the way they carry themselves or the way they speak, or there isn't a lot of actors who just carry like, hey, this is kind of like a smart person, like you would never have any doubt about how sharp he is, and how he's always thinking, and you don't need any of the evidence of how good a writer he is or anything like that to know that. It's all in his performance and all in his expressions and all in everything that he does. And this scene, like it's heartbreaking. And, but it's this thing too, where it's like, he loves her so much that he's just going to do this thing that's going to kill him because he doesn't want her to be hurt. And I think there is a thing about this story, which again, it's intrinsic in the story, but it, when you really break it down, it really, and I don't know if this is how the author was or whatever, but it really is a story about a really like insecure man who doesn't have faith, like, or thinks so little of this person he says he loves, that she couldn't see past. I mean, in the book, it's a big nose. It's not even like, it's not even like a big thing, and not to say that the height difference is like this huge thing, but it's more of like you can imagine in this kind of society, it's something that would be very, very difficult. Right. And I think that, but still, it's almost like, do you think this woman is like this most amazing woman in the world? And you think that she would be that shallow that she wouldn't love you because you're short? Like, I just don't think like that,
And nobody else really, I mean, maybe I'm forgetting something, but like the guy he duels in the Valverde, I think his name is.
Valverde,
calls him a freak, and he's like, you know, like that's the best you got kind of thing. But like, other than that, everyone seems to really like him and respect him and think he's awesome, and he's this incredible sword fighter and this brilliant poet, and he takes down that pompous actor like in a way that everyone was like cheering for him. So yeah, I guess I never really got that. I mean, it's something that's not really established super well here, that like the world looks at Cyrano, this person with dwarfism, in a way that's, like it's, you almost kind of forget about it through a lot of the movie. And I think reading a little bit about Erica Schmidt, Peter Dinklage's wife, who basically wrote this for him. Yeah. She kind of said that's how he actually is, right? Like, nobody is looking at you like, you're this person with dwarfism. It's like, no, you're this incredible actor, and everybody likes you. You have this like unbelievable screen presence, and, be more sure of yourself. And I think that's kind of the point at the end, right? He has that line where he says, I was in love with my pride, or whatever he says at the end. And I think that's a lot of what it is, right? Yep. He is projecting this idea that, he doesn't want to open himself up to it because he doesn't want what he has probably his whole life sort of trained himself to avoid, which is the situations where, well, he's a tragic hero, right? That's the tragic flaw, because he's really good at everything else. Yeah, he's really good at like everything. Like, he's very good at everything.
But yeah, this scene is wonderful. And I was thinking it leads us into, Kelvin Harrison Jr., who's the actor I don't know who plays Christian, who I think is
He's
also
really good
quite good in this movie.
Yep.
Nice singing voice as well. I think he does a good job in his songs. And I think the movie does a good job. Obviously, a lot of times we're working in broad strokes. It's a musical. It's also based on a piece of classic literature. So there's a lot of, you have to just buy that these people love each other, even though they haven't really spoken at all. They saw each other for like 2 seconds and they're madly in love. You just have to take it as like, that's what it is.
Most of them. Yeah.
Yes, because if you don't,
literally is 2 seconds.
Yeah, you just have to take it. Like, you just have to be like, okay, I just have to give myself over to the reality of this movie, which is this story, which is that they fell in love immediately, and that's
like,
the case.
No offense to either one of them, Haley Bennett or Kelvin Harrison Jr. They are not the most beautiful people I've ever seen in a movie. Like, they're both very good looking, but they look like people that you could encounter in your daily life, right?
Which
they're not
I like about
superhuman beautiful. I like that too. I think that's a really interesting choice.
Yeah.
We've talked about other people, in movies before. I always mention it. I teach Bonnie and Clyde in my classes all the time, and it's like, who are the two most attractive people in the world that you could have play these characters? And it's Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like either one of them has that like superhuman good looking quality. They're both like beautiful to look at, but like in a, I don't want to say an approachable way. that's diminishing it, but like they are, I think it's definitely a choice that you don't have someone who is, it
isn't Margot Robbie, right?
Margot Robbie is a great example. I was going to say Sydney Sweeney, but perfect.
Yeah, but also, again, yes, obviously, someone who feels like they were crafted in like some sort of like attractiveness lab, right? So like,
Jennifer Connelly,
Jennifer Connelly, whoever.
Conversation on the show before, sure.
Like they both feel like they also fit into this world, right? And it's like, what I also appreciate, right, is that Haley Bennett, for a movie actress is full figured, right? And I think in this era, that's the kind of woman who was considered the height of beauty, right?
Yeah.
And I think like that's really cool that's like a person who was cast in this movie to play this role.
And they might be the two best looking people in this movie.
Yeah, they are. For sure they are. 100% they are.
Also a good choice.
Yes, 100% they are. But it does feel like these are the two best looking people in this town, right? But it's not like they're not two best looking people in the world, right? But that's not really what the important part is, right? It's like this will be their connection. And I think that they do a good job with Christian and Cyrano kind of building their sort of like camaraderie or relationship throughout the movie. And this idea that like Christian he's not an asshole, right? He's not like get out of here, little man.
Super likable,
yeah,
and
super likable.
So they're in the Guard together, and Cyrano has obviously like worked his way up through the ranks. And one of the things she asked, of Cyrano, which is heartbreaking because everything she asked him, it's like, this is the last thing in the world I want to do, but I'll do it for you, is to take care of him, right? Like make sure he doesn't, get hurt because he's the new recruit, and they're gonna haze him, obviously. And Cyrano's about to fight. He doesn't know who he is at first. It's like the next scene,
right? And
they're about to fight, and instead he says, "Embrace me," and it's like, let me pull you aside and tell you kind of not exactly what's really going on, but it's this really, I love the relationship between the two of them. And when it starts to get contentious later, I think it's really interesting. Also, the two of them just play off each other so nicely. Yeah, I mean, it's, if we didn't like Christian, this movie wouldn't work, but we really do. And, his own self-doubt, right? Like if Cyrano's thing is, well, I'm ugly, Christian really does seem to have this sense of, I just don't have the wit, I don't have the words, and that's what she wants, and that's really what this kind of comes to, right? Like she loves the soul of the person who's writing her letters, but she loves the face of this, very attractive person that she's fallen in love with. And so that's kind of where it all goes. And really the soul is Cyrano's.
Yeah, and I think it's also, it's partly he's being selfless in some ways, but he's also being selfish in other ways, which is he sort of wants to hear this adoration from her about the words that he writes, and would essentially him speaking his feelings and have her feel them and reciprocate them, without the danger of, being rejected, right? And I think that's a big part of it. This is also, we get that big number, right? The big guardsman number at this point. And this is when I was like, this is what movies are about, man. Like hundreds of people in period uniforms dancing on like some castle by the ocean with some crazy high like helicopter shot or whatever. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, And this is, obviously the history of musicals is so much tied to the history of movies. It's a big part of what made movies like a populist art form, right? Was this idea of like bringing, when the first time they brought sound into movies, it was like music, like let's do music, so it's like there's a big part of that, just intrinsically tied to the history of movies. And so whenever I see it in a big movie, it really kind of warms my heart a lot, to see it. And I love seeing this. I love seeing a bunch of just real people in uniform, in costumes, doing something, and I think it's so much fun to see that kind of stuff. And I love that number. That was the first song I really, really liked, was that first number that they do at like the barracks or whatever.
Well, it's like as close to a dance sequence as we get here,
Yes.
and they're not actually dancing; they're like training for war or whatever. But
they're training with a little bit of choreography. You know what I mean?
Well, it's very much choreography. They are dancing, but that's not what it's supposed to be. And reminds me very much of Anna Karenina when they go to the counting house and they're stamping the things, like it's punctuating the song there. He's done that a couple times before, or like I mentioned in Atonement, the soundtrack with the percussion of being the typewriter and those kinds of things. And it's like, this was the moment where I was like, wait a minute, this is Joe Wright's first musical. He probably should have made more of these.
Yeah. And then we get this like first meeting, right, between Christian and Roxanne in person, right? And before this, Christian's kind of like, I got it from here, dude. Like, I don't need you anymore, right?
And very quickly learns that that's not true.
Goes terribly, right? And the scene is also, it's got this great sort of like mix of, this sort of strained, sort of uncomfortable romanticness, and just like you said, like comedy of manners, farcical, sort of like I did laugh when she like storms away and he's like speechless, like that's the word I was trying to think of. I thought that was funny. And then we get the very famous window scene. I mean, it's in the Steve Martin Roxanne, right? But I thought this scene was fantastic, right? This like moment where he's first feeding him the words and then starts speaking for him.
Right. It's very farcical staging, but with Peter Dinklage kind of off on the side of the frame. Like, you can see the emotion on his face there. So it's both a comedic scene and a very dramatic scene in a lot of ways. And that's a very, very tough tightrope to walk. And I think it does it really nicely. And
they have it's so interesting because like him and Bennett separated from each other, and even in this scene, have really good chemistry together. They have just really good chemistry. And I will say through this whole movie, they play that like really old friend, thing really well. Like you can really feel the history between them, the way they laugh at each other, the way that like they kind of get at each other, their ease with each other. I think it's really, really nicely played from both of them. And in this scene, like, we get another song, which I like. I like the song in it, and I like the staging of it. Again, this is like, you're bringing it, it's a little bit strangled in that, like, she's just standing in a window singing, and it's like, okay, what else are you going to do in this moment? I get it. But he does open it up, though, with him kind of walking up the side, there. I liked that. Like, you're kind of changing up the blocking. And I thought it worked really nicely. I am in that moment, like, both Christian and Roxanne are idiots because like not only I don't know, she doesn't recognize his voice, which is insane, but also Christian not realizing that he's in love with her there is like, come on, man, like get your head out of your butt in that moment, But I thought that scene was great. Like I thought that was the romance of it, all that, the romance mixed with the pain, like that bittersweetness of it.
I think the staging is brilliant. The set is brilliant. It's really Joe Wright kind of working at the height of his powers. Yeah, and like you said, I just love it's like, these aren't even sets. These are just real places they went and shot. It's just and there isn't a moment where it feels inauthentic, right? And I think that's great. And so I really like this scene. And then I think, right, one of the next things we're gonna get is when Dagish comes to see her, and is basically like, I've been made, head of the king has made me head of the guard or whatever it is. Oh, we do that scene where he tries to recruit Cyrano to be like in his retinue. Part of his retinue, yeah. And Cyrano's like, no, I'm a free spirit. I'm not gonna.
They're great together too. They have a really good combative thing. That works
It
really
was
well.
so nice. I love Ben Mendelsohn a lot,
Yeah.
but like he's such a good villain. I really liked him in Darkest Hour because he's such a nice guy in that
He
movie
is so nice in it,
as
yeah.
the king, and it was cool to see him in that role. But also, it's really nice to see him back doing the thing that he is best at, is just being a real son of a bitch.
Yeah,
And
major
even
son
with
of a
this
bitch.
ridiculous looking makeup, which is period appropriate. It's not
yeah,
like
yeah.
they I mean they were kind of playing it up. The wig, it's pushed so far back on
It
his
is,
head.
yeah.
He's not bald. He has a great head of hair, but like the
Yeah.
character is bald. But they pushed it up and kind of gave him that hairline anyway,
Yeah.
which was a lot of fun.
And they
And
mapped that makeup on him so he even
yeah,
looks even
oh, yeah.
older than he is. He looks
Yep.
so craggle. He looks so like
I didn't
craggy.
recognize him at all in that first scene. I was like, wait a minute, is that Ben Mendelsohn? Like
Once he talked, I was like,
10
oh, it's
minutes-
Ben
sure.
Mendelsohn. Yeah.
Well, he has a very distinctive voice also. But yeah, he is he's so good in these sort of villainous roles, and we'll get to. There's another scene coming up that I really like.
Yeah.
But
So they're great. It's and again, it's just that Dinklage superpower. It's that Tyrion Lannister super, which is just like he can just destroy somebody with like a couple of words, and it's both like cutting and also hilarious. It's just he has that in this movie as well. And then when Dagauche kind of comes to Roxanne and is like, what I find it to be like, I made captain of the guard. I'm head of the guard, and I'm sending them all to war basically because he hates Cyrano. He wants him gone. And she sort of like convinces him like the biggest insult to Cyrano is if you left him here because, he really prides himself on his abilities and his bravery and stuff like that, which is true. Which is cool because we have seen that as evidence, right, in the movie that he does feel that way. But obviously she's playing this because she wants, especially, Christian to stay. But I think this scene and then the sort of like one of those next scenes where he sends that letter with the priest where he's like, either when I come there, we're getting married or we're doing it, not married.
Oh, man. Yeah. So I sent a priest. So if he's there when I get there, then we'll get married and then we'll do it. Otherwise, I will have you one way or the other. I was like, wow, what a son of a bitch.
And you're really like, this is like a cartoony villain son of a bitch, right? That's how you feel.
Yeah, he's twirling his mustache, but you wouldn't have a mustache being that character.
Exactly. And she lets Cyrano read this letter. Dinklage is playing it perfectly, very understated the way he's playing it. And she sort of makes up what the letter says, right? That he sent this priest so that she could get married to Christian, basically. And I love that Cyrano's kind of like, the Duke is coming, right? The letter says he's coming. She's like, well,
she's like, oh, just delay him.
Just delay him. And I'm like, you're being very mean to your friend, but that's fine.
Right. I love the marriage too, like the wedding with the priest. We see like a glimpse of it, and that's it, right? We don't even know if either one of them is like actually into it in that moment. It's just like, no, let's get this thing done, and we actually want to focus on in Cyrano in this moment.
Yeah, and then we get the Mendelssohn song, which is fine. It's a little Russell Crowe from Les Mis-ish. It's fine. It's very short. That's one thing too. One of the things I think this movie, to its benefit, does is the songs that I think are not especially like musically dynamic, let's say, they're usually, like you said, the lyrics are very short. It's like a couple verses and then we're out. We're out. We're not belaboring it, right? We're not doing this long, like 4-minute long song that maybe you're not super into. It's like, I think they kind of know like a lot of these songs are very story focused. They're very like, we're getting information out, and
we actually know what we need to know about that character and how he feels about it. That's all the song is. It's like, I'm gonna take what's mine, basically. I liked this one though because it sounds the most like the National.
Gotcha.
His voice sounds the most like Matt Berninger's, so I keep saying that. I'm pretty sure he's the lead singer of the National. Let's just say he is, but if I'm wrong, post something terrible in the comments. Again, that's a band that I've always liked, but I've never gotten into. I know if if I took some time, I could be a huge fan of the National, but it's like, you can only see so many movies. I'm a huge music person also. At the time when the National was huge, there was so much other stuff that I liked that was so big, and I was just diving into every discography, and that was just one I didn't get to, but everything I've liked I've really heard, and this song really kind of reminded me of a lot of that. So, and it's a very quick paced scene, again, really nicely cut, and I will never want less Ben Mendelsohn in any movie ever, particularly in a villainous role like this.
And what I'll say, one of my favorite little scenes in the movie is after he sings that song, we've gotten full, like I said, from every moment we seen Ben Mendelsohn for the entire movie, he's been basically just a shitheel, right? The whole time. He's been he's like a cartoon, like everything he does seems like it's like disgusting or malicious or whatever. And when he gets to the place where the marriage is happening and he opens the door and he sees them getting married and he kind of leaves, he kind of shuts the door, kind of shocked, and he kind of takes off his wig. And this little scene between Mendelsohn and Dinklage is so good and so understated.
Dinklage doesn't say anything.
He doesn't
right?
say anything. He just kind of looks at him. And, you know, Mendelsohn really brings it down. Like, he brings, like, it's a one time you feel in, like, the whole movie that you're getting, like, something about what this guy maybe really is somewhere, you know, where he, like, is like,
Right, because he's showing up to basically commit rape, and we kind of feel for him in this moment.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Wow, that's pretty big there. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it's just like he's just kind of like, you feel like,
because this is a melodrama, right? Like, this should be this big explosive moment, and it's like not that at all. And like, you actually feel the tiniest. I felt a little bit of sympathy for this character who is a piece of shit, and
you feel like Cyrano is feeling kind of the same thing in the moment. He's kind of feeling a little bit of, for the first time, a little bit of empathy or a little bit of like simpatico-ness with him, being like
understanding.
Sure. Like,
she rejected me too.
Exactly. And that's why he's like silent the whole time. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like, how do you respond to that?
Yeah. And then he goes in and he's like, well, I'm going back in, basically. And he goes in and he's just like, that's it. I'm sending them. That's fine. But I'm sending them to the front. That's it. And she's like, but you promised me. And he was like, okay. Like, you also promised me something, but that's fine. Again, no sympathy for him at all, right? But it's just like one of those things where it's like, obviously this was going to happen. What did you think was going to happen in this moment? And again, another like great play by Dinklage when, you know, they were kind of leaving and she's like, can you promise me he won't ever be hungry or lonely or whatever? And he's like, I can't promise that, you know?
The only thing he can promise is, you know, will he write to me? And of course he will, because it's actually you.
Yeah.
Just the rueful faces that he makes in this movie are, man, unbelievable.
Unbelievably good, those faces. And then we get this war part of the movie.
Oh, the cut is great too.
Yes.
It's just this like boom, and we're there, and it's just this stark, like, you know, we've been seeing these like sumptuous, handsomely mounted locations throughout the movie, and like now we're on the side of a rock, and you know, the sky is just pure like light gray, and you know, everything is sharp and jagged and ugly and gritty, and I really like this movie. This is you know, again, another one of those movies where just sort of a triumph of production design and just kind of knowing exactly what things should look like in the moment they should look that way.
Yeah. And I think this lasts like 45 minutes or so, where I think is when we get to this point.
Is it that much?
It's about 45 minutes. Yeah,
wow.
I'm pretty sure. It's about 45 minutes. I think to me, this is the best part of the movie to me. And I think it's the most effective combination of all the elements of the movie that he's been trying to do the whole time.
Well, maybe, but like I said, like all the lightheartedness is literally like that cut is the end of any of that.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Like once we are at war, like, you know, there are things in this movie that were, you know, very fun and kind of make you smile.
True.
Like the swashbuckling and the you know, the more upbeat music and the comedy, the little comedic bits, you know, the farce stuff. There's literally no more of that.
No,
like,
there's
now
not.
We are in, you know, we're in straight up atonement world here, like where everything is just like so fucking sad.
But what I think it does so well, which many movies of any kind don't do, is that because of all that stuff we got beforehand, this stuff hits so much harder.
Agreed.
Right? Hits so much harder because you completely believe both of their feelings for this woman, you know, and both of sort of their desperation and not really this really, I think, feeling from both of them that they're probably not going to get back, right? And the only thing that Cyrano has to hold on to is these letters that he's been writing. We get like, you know, we do get a little bit of like when he sneaks into the enemy, like, you know, trenches and runs out or whatever. There's a tiny little bit of lightheartedness there where he's still kind of like the Cyrano that we have like come to know over the first half or first 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah. Well, he's very brave. He's very daring, but it's not in that fun. It's not Errol Flynn anymore.
No.
Now we're just in a straight up war movie.
No, it's not. And you know, we get this we get this scene, another scene with Ben Mendelsohn where he basically goes like, the king has told me like I have to sacrifice one of my regimens, basically. And he's like, oh, I take no pleasure in this, you know, and you obviously does take a lot of pleasure
decide
in it.
or whatever.
Let God decide.
It's not me sending them. It's whatever happens.
Yes. And, you know, I think that this song, when he's like, okay, like we're going to this battle, it's probably a suicide mission. Go collect all the letters from the men, right, to their home. This song is unbelievably good. The staging of the scene is so good. And the first guard, right, who sings, is Glenn Hansard, he's in the Irish band The Frames, but probably movie fans would know him most because he's the star of the movie Once that came out in 2008. He has the voice of a fucking angel. And like, he's so good and expressive in this scene when he's writing this letter. And then these two other sort of, they're both, all the three guys in that one little room who are handing the letters off are all sort of like, you know, European, mostly British or Irish or whatever singers from like bands or whatever. So they're there just to kind of perform those.
Sam Amadon is one of them.
Yes. Yeah. Those numbers. And it's heartbreaking. It truly is heartbreaking. And this is one of those times where, because of the setting they're in and where they're going to transition to, the smallness, I think, really, really works really, really well, because you're in this moment where you're in these last moments with these people really kind of facing down what they are thinking is their end, right? And what are the things they want to say? What are the things that the things they can't leave unsaid anymore? And it's just a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's the best song in the movie. I think the best staging of a song in the movie. Like, this is really, again, it's just not, it's unexpected, right? Like, I just didn't know that's kind of where this was going, and I think there are ways to do this that, you know, might be more in line with the first half of the movie. And I was just so on board with this at this moment. I mean, you kind of see where it's going, you know, it's going to be a tragic ending, and this, like, even beyond, like, this takes it like a step past that. I mean, you know, Cyrano the story does not have a happy ending. So it's like the tragedy's already there, the drama's already there, but like, let's let it kind of peak here. And maybe that makes it a little bit easier to take, you know, what actually happens at the end. Yeah. And this song, you know, whatever it is about it, it's just perfect.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then we get this scene in the middle, right? This sort of like dialogue break in the middle where we have the final scene between Christian and Cyrano, where
tear
Christian
stain on the letter. He
finally realizes,
out.
And realizes how many, Cyrano writes her a letter every single day from him, and, you know, all of this stuff, and he realizes it. And again, to the credit of this character and the way it's performed, he is just like, you know, you have to tell her, it has to be you. Like, this is a lie. Like, I don't want her to love me because she thinks I'm you know? Right. And he says what we were saying before, you have to give her more credit than you've been giving her, right? Like, you know, she's not the person who's going to look at you and see that you're small and be like, there's no way I can ever be with this person, right? That she's not that type of person. You know, I think I will say the one part of this sequence that I'm like, maybe go back and rethink exactly how you block or frame this, is when he's like, I love line where he's like, I'd rather, you know, die than have someone love me for someone who I'm not, or whatever he says. And then he just sort of like beelines it past the people and runs at the, and I was like,
time to die.
Yeah, time to die. He could have just died like as part of the group and it would have had the same effect to me, you know, but whatever. But, you know, when he runs out, before he runs through, they're all in a line, like singing the song or whatever. The song, you know, the reprise comes up and they're singing the song again. He runs through and they're singing it as he's like running basically to his doom. And then we get just them. I love that them walking, sort of like this regiment walking into like the mist, and we just see the bullets start to fly, right? And then they just like cuts, right? And we're in this like military hospital, or this, you know, this hospital, and these kind of nuns are talking, and Roxanne is there and she's sitting with somebody. We don't know who she's sitting with, right? We think maybe it's Cyrano, maybe what's his name survived, maybe Christian survived, because, you know, we see him again, right, after he runs into this spot. You know, Cyrano kind of drags him.
Cyrano carries him out.
Yeah. And it's like, you're going to live, right? And then Cyrano gets shot himself. You know, we don't know. And then we get
I
Yeah.
liked the ambiguity of this
Yes.
moment. I also, I mean, the nuns in this convent,
Mhm.
the habits or whatever
Yeah.
they're wearing are such a Joe Wright thing. This like
Uh-huh.
flowy white, it's just it's a costume design choice. Like, yep, that's the Pride and Prejudice Anna Karenina guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, like I feel, and maybe this is a discussion for later on here, but like having watched Joe Wright films, I mean, I feel like of the four filmmakers we've discussed so far in the show, he is the one where it's like, yep, that's a distinctive, quintessential Joe Wright moment.
100%.
Where I don't know that you can do that with any of the others quite as distinctly as you can with it. And not that, I've enjoyed a lot of the films,
Yeah.
Ben Affleck's and Karen Kusama's and Kaczynski's, but like so much of this is like, very distinctive to Joe Wright. And I think seeing all of his films in order and then getting to this one, I mean, this one, maybe that kind of improves this one a little bit because it feels so much like this is his vision, the puppets in the beginning and all that stuff. Like, this is this guy, right? Like, this
Absolutely.
is a movie. This one feels, The Woman in the Window is not that at all, but this feels like however this fared, in theaters or whatever, but like, here's someone I love who's taking a major role in this movie. Here is like everything that I do really well, kind of all in one place. This feels like, in some sense, kind of the quintessential Joe Wright movie, even if it's not his best movie. It might be the most Joe Wright movie. I always say that about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? It's not my favorite Tarantino movie. I don't think it's even close to the best Tarantino movie, but in some ways, it's the most Tarantino movie. And I think this might be it for Joe Wright.
That makes sense. I think that's a pretty good take on that. And I think, I think
that conversation started with The Habit, by the way.
I know,
That's a very, very small thing, but
yeah.
I'm extrapolating a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I think it was a great point and a great sort of like detour to take into talking about it because we're getting towards the end of the movie anyway, and we're getting towards the end of our discussion of Joe Wright. So it's good to start talking about these sort of wrap up feelings. I do want to just say, like, I think we get this final moment where Cyrano is sort of, he's like living in a little apartment and he's destitute at this point. They talk about how he doesn't have any money for food, really. He won't eat.
We never know why, right? He's wounded in war. He's not well, but it's like he's still this guy who's amazing at everything. Like, but
he can't really do the things he used to do anymore, right? I mean, his job was being a member of the guard, right? Can't be a member of the guard anymore.
I guess that's true. He's still a poet, though.
He's a lot of money in being a poet. So he, we get this very, this is we're in a very dramatic mode here, right? We're melodramatic mode. He's writing this note to Roxanne and he can't finish it, and then he touches his war wound and he's bleeding, and there's like blood all over the note, and he begins to walk somewhere. We don't really know exactly where yet. He falls to the ground like on the way there, and we're like, what's gonna happen? But he does show up at this like, hospital.
Right. He's been going there every week to just like tell her the news, what's going on in the the
And we get a little bit of
their relationship at this point.
lightness back in, right? We get he's being funny. Again, this is where you feel like, oh, these people have known each other literally forever.
And
like,
tells her about a dog getting an enema.
Yeah.
That's like the news of the day that day.
Yeah. This is how you talk to somebody who you've known forever, who just likes your little jokes and likes, you get a little rush out of them laughing at your little joke, and like, it's just like the very little fun comfort thing, right? And he has to say the letter, and he starts like reading it, and then he basically starts just saying it, and she sort of realizes right in this moment, and she's kind of like angry, which she should be because they did lie to her for however long. She got married to a guy that was lying to her, and Cyrano let it happen. But Cyrano's like, I think this is my last day, and he kind of collapses. And then again, just like this scene, the war scene, this scene where they're like laying next to each other, like singing like these sort of like confessions to each other. The
shot where he looks up and sees the light coming down into this like wrecked building, and that's life, right? Like I forget exactly what line it is. That's the joy of life right there. Just seeing this light. It's all I need. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Love it.
And like just wonderful, beautiful, so romantic, right? And they're seen together. They're so close and so intimate with each other. And this is where it feels, I feel like the most like almost Les Mis-y, right? This is very Les Mis-like in like this person's dying and we're going to like have this really tender moment together as they die, and, really beautiful, and, but also not like just a moment where she's like, they both are still very aware of their faults and everything that's happened. And I love that. He's not just going like, I love you and everything's fine now. Right. It's not that.
And They're not mad about it either. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, that's life. This happens.
Yeah.
I love the staging of the scene also. Joe Wright, I was reading an interview with him about this film, and he said, you know, people know me as this guy who loves these flashy camera movements and someone who's always just doing all these elaborate things. And I really wanted in this moment to just not do that at all. Like, this is about two people, and I just want to get close to them and have you get close to them. And we're not going to move the camera. We're just going to let these two incredible actors just kind of do their thing. And he really does. Like, there's very little Joe Wright flourish. Like, after that lovely shot of, you know, the light coming down through the rafters of this building, then we just kind of get these two actors, you know, like it is on stage. Like, at that point in the play, right, you're not looking at anything but just those two people there. Your eye is drawn just to their faces. And so he just kind of lets that happen. It's like, let me take all the Joe Wright out of this moment and just let them go for it. And it works.
It works so well. And in the way that it is uniquely a movie is that, and on stage, you can never get this close, right, to their faces. And just letting these two actors sort of play it out and just be emotional and raw with each other. And Dinklage, again, we said it the whole time, is so good in this scene. You know, you feel all of the emotions when you're supposed to feel them, and he kind of really takes you through this scene as an actor. And it really, really works exceedingly well. And it is a very tragic end. Obviously, he dies. It's a very tragic ending, but, you know, I don't think you're left feeling down, right? There is something kind of beautiful about the ending as well as it being sad. And because at least this guy who followed this whole time, even if it was at the very end, was able to say what he actually felt and, you know, have one moment with this person. That, you know,
their souls are unburdened in this moment, even though he dies here.
Yeah. A beautiful ending and like, and really a beautiful whole end to the movie. Like you said, a movie that I feel like, again, most people don't know exists. And I think a movie that I think a lot of people would enjoy if they just ended up giving it a chance.
Agreed. I never do this, right? But like, I was watching this, and by the time I got to this point, I was like, you know, this is a movie I could just kind of put on from time to time. Like, you know, just like check in, check out. Like, now I've seen it. I don't do that, right? I don't like put on a movie before I go to bed. I'll watch stupid YouTube videos or something like that. But this feels like a movie where if I just kind of let this run in the background while I'm working or something like that, then every once in a while I'll just look up like, oh, yeah, I really like this scene. I like this song. I like the way they do this one shot here or something. And, you know, what I probably will end up happening if I do that, and this is why I probably won't do that, is I'll get caught up in it and need to finish it. But it does, there's something about I found it just like weirdly appealing in a way that most movies are not to me. And you know, it feels like something I could, as sad as it often is, it feels like something I could just kind of put on and just appreciate, you know, in whatever situation, whatever context.
Absolutely right. That's Joe Wright. Joe Wright's all done. So before we do the rankings, how did you feel about the series, Nick?
I honestly, I mean, I knew I liked this filmmaker a lot. I was a huge fan of Atonement, as we talked about with that episode. You know, there are some clunkers in this filmography. Like, we haven't done anyone yet who had a spotless track record, right? I mean, there's been clunkers in all of them. And Joe Wright's, I think, were especially painful because they're just these, you know, they are real misfires where it's just like, why does this exist? You know, or I just don't understand it, you know, like the singing Nirvana in Pan. Oh boy, that might be the nadir of his filmography. But what I will say is this made me definitely appreciate the ones I liked more. And it also brought my attention, you know, particularly this one and Anna Karenina. I would have never watched either of those movies. And now I am so glad that I saw them. And I'm excited for what he does next. And I know it's probably not all going to be gold, but, you know, I feel like he's got more hits than misses. And I really, you know, as someone who just really appreciates, you know, the ability to craft a shot, this incredible choreography, incredible production design, incredible sets. I mean, I know people call him flashy and they say he's a little, you know, can be superfluous. A couple of the reviews of this one were like, you know, all the emotion is sapped out of the story so he can just do these flourishes. I don't think that at all. And I actually like that stuff. You know, I'm not a musicals guy. I'm not a melodrama guy, but I think Joe Wright does melodrama really well. And you give him the right material and he can rock and roll with it. And even some of his less successful movies like The Woman in the Window, they do kind of retain some signature style there, and there are like, look, there's not a single movie in the Joe Wright filmography where I'm like, I would never watch any of this again.
Mhm.
There's parts of Pan that I thought were really cool. They weren't the majority of the movie, but there were things in that movie where I was like, that was neat. I'm glad I saw that. So yeah, I think I'm a bigger fan of him, and maybe that's true of all of them. It certainly was with Ben Affleck also. Like, I realized how much I appreciate him as a filmmaker, but I think it was a little bit more so with Joe Wright, because I haven't thought about him in a while. I haven't seen anything he's made since Hanna, which is a while ago, and I liked all the movies up to that point, except for The Soloist. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we did this. I think that was a really good choice, and we could toot our own horns a little bit. He was interesting to talk about also.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel very much the same as you do. And obviously this is the longest filmography we've covered so far. It's also the filmography that I think the longest stretch of movies that neither of us had seen, right? There was the whole back half of his filmography neither one of us were familiar with at all. So it was a little bit out, we're going a little bit out on the limb, to just be like, with Kaczynski, it was a very short filmography, and I knew that I really liked the first one and really liked the last one, and didn't know what the middle was going to be like, but I knew that I really liked those two. Kusama, sort of, I knew Jennifer's Body was really good, and I knew The Invitation was really good. So I was, again, it's short, so I knew that at least like 40% of the filmography was going to be a lot of fun, right? And Affleck, I'd seen all of them except for one of them, so it's like I knew that as well. This made me feel a little more comfortable just going into our future. Obviously, we're doing Peter Jackson next, so that's like because he won the fan vote. But like after that, like when we're picking filmmakers, it makes me a little bit more open to being like, I don't know this person that well, but I would still like to do this because I think there's some interesting stuff in their filmography, and I would like to know more about them, right? And I think it's been really interesting to do Joe Wright because, I think he fits interestingly into more of like the under-discussed, like kind of like, I guess, core value.
Auteur, right? Like, love him or hate him, he is doing something that is very much him. And, as I've been saying a lot tonight, where he comes from, he grew up in a puppet theater. He grew up with creative parents that were doing a very specific thing. And you can really see that in his, and like, that is what an auteur is, right? I mean, he has, as you mentioned it earlier, right? Like, none of his movies is exactly like any of the others, right?
Yeah.
Like, he could have done an Anna Karenina that was a lot like Pride and Prejudice. He could have done a Cyrano that was a lot like Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. But he actually hasn't. I mean, I think he's kind of pushed himself in certain directions, and these movies all kind of exist in and of themselves, but it's a really interesting filmography. And again, I just think, it makes me a little sad that a movie as good as Cyrano has been seen by like no one.
Yeah.
I do think people would really like it. And it's, hopefully we can shed a little light on stuff like that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you want to do a show like this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Says the guy who sung the praises of John Carpenter's The Ward on the John Carpenter show I used to do. It's a pretty good movie. I'm again, same thing like you were echoing, like, and I think I mentioned this in previous episodes as well. He's just a really fascinating guy where he learning just from watching his films, the idea like, he never was successful enough to really be lauded as an auteur, right? Because he just none of his movies made enough money or made enough impact in their time, right? To give him that cachet. But he's always just been, and is always just a little too headstrong and auteurish to be a workman like studio guy, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, he's never doing a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I mean, don't never say never.
Well, I guess that's true. I would definitely go see his Marvel movie.
The last movie he did was Cyrano, which made $6 million. What Joe Wright's going to do next, who knows, right? But I think that, and whatever he does, if we're doing the show and he does it, we'll cover it and we'll talk about it, and I'll be excited to watch
table,
it.
Though, right? Like I've
nothing on the table
times,
right now.
Like he seems to be enjoying life with his child and Haley Bennett at the moment, which is great. Good for him. But,
good for him.
I'd like to see him get back to filmmaking at some point.
Absolutely. So let's rank these suckers.
This should be an interesting one because there are just more movies to work with. I'm sorry that I looked like I was checked out. I wasn't, but I just wanted to like get my list down somewhere because it's on my other. Yeah, I did it elsewhere.
It's okay. So. I got it in front of me. I got mine in front of me.
Me too.
How do you want to go? Like, But we usually do this. You usually do. You do a list and I do a list, or do we do like my number 9 is this, my number, and then
No, let's make it dramatic. Let's go back and forth.
okay. All right. So why don't you
I'm
start with
sure
your
there's
number
going to
9?
be some crossover. My number 9 is Pan.
Yeah, that's my number 9 too. It's by far his worst movie for sure.
It's by far his worst movie.
Yeah.
There are things, like I said, I liked it more than you did. There are some things in it that made an impression on me, and there are some things that I really liked. But overall, I felt like it was unsuccessful, not a great use of his talents. Just felt like rushed and cheap in some ways, even though it wasn't. It was one of his most expensive. I think it was his most expensive movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, just poor choice of approach to material that maybe he could have handled better.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Not a great movie.
No, not a great movie at all.
It's your number 9 also?
Yeah, there was no question. There was just absolutely no question. All right. Your number 8.
My number 8 is The Soloist.
It's my number 8 as well.
Oh, okay. Interesting, because it's not what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, like when we did that episode, I was like, did I ever see this movie before? And I think finally, long after we talked about it, I was like, yeah, I definitely saw this in theaters and was just disappointed by it. It's like Joe Wright doing a very American movie, and it's just kind of not working out. The schmaltziness of that just kind of killed it for me. And although there are some nice moments in it, like I don't think there's any film he's ever made that don't have some nice moments, and it's got 2 great actors, and, a lot of people I really like in it. I just don't think it really works as a drama. It's way too self-serious and way too schmaltzy
and way too long. It's just all those things.
Long.
Yeah, yes. It's just a misfire. You can it's one of those movies where you can understand why he does it. You can understand why they wanted him to do it.
Yeah.
But
it's a good story. I mean, you can see why the studio would purchase that article and want to do something about it. But
absolutely, yes, it doesn't work.
It just shouldn't be the way it is.
All right, your number 7.
My number 7, and I'm sorry to put it so low, but The Woman in the Window.
I mean, that's also my number 7.
Okay. We may have the exact same list.
I don't think we have I think once we get up into the top like 3 or 4, where it's going to be.
I think so too, because mine has changed recently a little bit. But
yeah.
Yeah, not a good movie, but I think a very entertaining movie.
So yeah, we're into like, it's not good, but it's at least kind of watchable.
But it's watchable. Yeah, you should see it. Yeah. Right? Like there is more that is memorable and is fun and is interesting. Again, if you just watch The Woman in the Window as a comedy and you just sort of, maybe take your favorite thing to be a little intoxicated on and just like soak in the crazy atmosphere of this movie. I mean, it takes some pretty wild swings. The Julianne Moore's character appearance as a jump scare, or this fight scene in the rain where there's like just gallons of water pouring all over the actors, the crazy performances. There's a lot of fun to be had in this movie, but it's a terrible movie.
Yes, absolutely. All right, number 6.
My number 6 is Darkest Hour.
Okay, this is our first difference. So why don't you?
I thought we might differ on this one.
Okay.
This is the one, as I said when we viewed it. I love the performance. I love the when Gary Oldman is delivering a Winston Churchill speech, I'm 100% on board. But I felt like a lot of the Joe Wright stylistic stuff just didn't really work for this movie. This one felt a little schmaltzy to me too, and I think it was just too interesting of material to take that particular approach to. I will say, now having seen Cyrano also, when people are about to die in a war, like that fatalistic moment of being in war and everything's coming crashing down on you, Joe Wright is your guy.
Yeah.
Like he's really, really good. If there is one particular kind of scene, a very specific particular kind of scene that he's really good at, I think he's very, very good at that. We see it in Atonement. We see it in Darkest Hour. We see it in Cyrano. We see a little bit of it in Anna Karenina, I want to say.
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, that's a particular scene that he does really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, my number 6, I'm going to guess is your number 5, and I think my guess is we're going to be vice versa on this. Number 6 is Hanna for me. Is Hanna even higher than 5 for you?
It is.
Oh wow. Okay, so I guess I'll wait then until we get to your place. The higher, we'll talk about it when we get to you.
Okay.
Number 6 is Hanna.
Then I'm sorry I said so much about Darkest Hour.
No, Darkest Hour is my number 5. So it's not like a big difference right here between the two. So I can talk about it right now. I can just say like I don't disagree with a lot of the stuff you're saying about it, but I will say I think I like Schmaltz a little bit more than you do, so I think that's part of it for me. It's also, I love the performance. I didn't mind the filmmaking at all. Actually, I really liked the filmmaking that he employed in the movie. And I just found it sort of an engrossing movie. And a lot of times movies like that, I don't really feel that way. So
I agree with that too. It's a very exciting approach to material that could be very dry.
Mhm.
It's not the approach that I wanted, but like I'll say this about Joe Wright also, just in general. I don't think any of his movies are boring at all. Maybe The
No, no, no,
Soloist
no. The Soloist is pretty boring,
in
dude.
parts, but for the most part, he's very good at
Pan
pacing,
is
and
also pretty boring when you get down to it.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's a movie that's like, look at me, I'm exciting, but it's not exciting at all.
Pan never stops moving.
Yeah, no, but it has no stakes.
Even when it should. Yeah, that's
no
true.
stakes.
I don't know. I was not bored by any Joe Wright movies.
Yeah, I was bored by Pan and the Soloist, but that's it. Women's Window, like we talked about, I didn't really like it that much, but I was not bored by it. Right? I was like,
I've seen it more times than anyone on the face of the earth.
I know.
I'm proud of claiming that. I've only seen it 2.5 times, but like literally, I'm not sure if anyone made it through more than once.
All right, so your number 6 was Darkest Hour. My number 6, right? My number 6 was Hanna.
Okay.
My number 5 was Darkest Hour. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Pride and Prejudice. And
what an insane take! Don't just stop talking because we're gonna talk about that later. Okay.
Fine.
You're gonna let me talk about it later, sir.
No, I will, but like, can we draw a line? Like, this is, I think, all of my top 4 now. Wait a minute. Am I missing one here? No, I'm not. Okay. My top 5 Joe Wright movies, I think they're all really, really, really good movies. Like they're all like, 3.5 stars plus. This was a hard one to place for me. Because I really pretty much liked everything about it. It's just, I liked the 4 above it more. So, highest possible recommendation. I really wanted to go see it when they just re-released it in theaters.
Yeah.
I have no complaints about it whatsoever, and I think it's an incredible feature film debut for a filmmaker. It's just there's stuff in the others that I liked more than anything that I saw in this, but it's an incredible movie, and I have literally nothing bad to say about it.
Gotcha. I mean, I mostly agree with you. I like you're gonna talk about Hanna whatever place it's in for you, but Hanna for me is like in that like it's pretty good. Like that's where I'm at with Hanna. Very high highs, but like. Sometimes like the stuff I didn't like, I just didn't really like jive with. And I think like we talked about in that episode, just like,
I mean, that's exactly my take on Darkest Hour.
Just like, I'm like, Joe, just calm down. And that happened so many times in Hanna watching it this time where I was like, man, like I get it, what you're trying to do, but I know you're trying to just go really far away from like what people think you are, but you've gone way too far in the other direction. So let's just kind of try to course correct it back into a middle portion. But I've learned since watching all the other movies, then there is no middle place for Joe Wright. There is I just go to a different extreme every single time I make a movie, right? So like that's what he is. So wait, your number 5 was Pride and Prejudice. What's your number 4? Sorry, because we got out of order on how we were talking about them.
What was your number 5?
Darkest Hour was my number 5.
Okay, oh, perfect. My number 4 is Hanna.
Okay.
I really, really love just, I think it just kind of hit particular things for me. I love elevated genre movies, and that's absolutely what Hanna is. It's this kick-ass action movie. It's got an incredible performance at the center of it. There are scenes in that movie that I think are just beautifully staged. There's great action scenes. The ending is terrific. It's his tightest movie, it's his shortest movie.
Yes,
There's some slack pacing in the middle of it, but when that movie moves, it just moves like a bat out of hell, and I really like that. It's really cool seeing him, this prestige pick Hollywood English director guy just doing some like down and dirty awesome fight scenes, and the moment where Hanna breaks out of the facility that she's in, whatever, that's like an all-timer. The conclusion and the amusement park, the abandoned amusement park, is like really, I loved it the first time I saw it, loved it even more the second time I saw it. Saoirse Ronan's incredible in it, and yeah, that movie kicks a lot of ass, and I'm considering actually showing that to my students, including that on my syllabus, because I think they'll really like it, and I think there's a lot we can talk about there. So yeah, that one kind of rose in stature for me, and I wasn't sure it was going to. It seems like it kind of went down for you.
It did go down a little bit for me. I mean, it's not going down, it didn't go down a ton for me, but I definitely... I remember, like I think I talked about in the episode, I remember when it came out, I was like in love with it. And then when I watched this, I was like, okay, like I still like it. Don't get me wrong. And I agree with you. Saoirse Ronan is unbelievable. I think Eric Bana's really good in it as well. Yeah. And I really like
and Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett. I really like a lot of sequences in it.
Hollander. Yeah,
Hollander. Yeah. I like sequences in it, but some of it that we talked about in that episode, it's just a little squishy for me in the
That's fair.
My number 4 is Cyrano.
Okay.
We just talked a lot about it, so I don't think either of us are going to really spend a lot of time talking about it because we just listened to the episode. But I will say, for all the reasons we said today, I just think it's this big. Again, now for me, now in this top 4, my top 4, for me, I consider like all, really good to great movies, right? And you know, I think like he's kind of we've got like Pan and the Soloist, which are bad, which I would not tell anybody to watch either one of those movies. I would never say
Agreed.
you should watch the movies. Woman in the Window, I'd be like, look, if you're looking just to like laugh at something that's kind of like so bad it's kind of fun,
Have like 6 White Claws and put
yeah,
that movie
exactly,
in. You'll have a good
totally
time.
fine, have a good time. Hanna, I would be like, listen, it's a fun movie. There's some problems with it. You can definitely have a good time, but I would say good movie for you to watch. Darkest Hour would be like, look, if you can get around the fact that it's like a prestige biopic thing, really good one of those, right? There's still qualifiers there. Once we get into this top 4, for me, there aren't really any qualifiers for me anymore. You know, the movies are, I think, varying degrees of some. There's still some stuff that doesn't work, and especially in my 4 and 3, there's some stuff I think works and doesn't work. But I think the stuff that works really elevates it to a point where it's like it's still really worth seeing, right?
I would say that about my top 5, which you're right. Yeah, they're all like, if that's your best movie, any one of those, his top 5 movies is your best movie. That's an incredible career. And like, you know, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. So Cyrano, like we said, I think it really emotional, dramatic, great performances, really well shot, really a lot of scope and grandeur, and you know, I think it should be applauded. So that's my number 4. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Cyrano.
Okay.
And actually it was a little hard. Like I said, it was tough to place. I had it a little further down. I think I had it, you know, it was that and Hanna and Pride and Prejudice. I was very hard, having a tough time organizing those, but I don't know. I think maybe what it was I went in with so few expectations and knowing so little about it, and it won me over just so hard, particularly in the second half. And, you know, when I kind of understood what it was and what it was trying to do, and those performances are really good. And like I said, it might be the most Joe Wright movie, and I guess I'm a Joe Wright fan. I really like what he does, and this is a great example of what he does. And we did just talk about it a lot, but you know, there was part of me that flirted with putting it even higher, because I really, just as a satisfying movie experience, it really was. It kind of, particularly because I'm not a musicals guy, you know, this is not something that I normally would gravitate toward. I'm so glad I saw it, and I absolutely will see it again. I will recommend it to people. I would love for my wife to see it. I'm not sure she's going to be crazy about it, but I want to kind of maybe give it a shot with her, and like this one a lot.
Yeah. My number 3 is Atonement. And I think if you go back and listen to that episode, it's a testament to how strong the strong parts of that movie are for it to be at number 3 for me. Because it's a movie I have a very conflicted relationship with, and I think that some of his other movies, Cyrano for one, and a movie I'm going to talk about soon, his sort of inability to get around the artifice of an Atonement, I think really works in some of his other movies, and I think is a little bit at odds in Atonement, where I think he's still trying to be like he's still trying to be a prestige filmmaker in that moment, where he's like, I'm making the prestige movie right now. And there's just that part of him that's a little bit of a madman that like is fighting, that is always leaking in, right? And I think it's a little bit odds there, so it kind of brings it down a little bit for me. And we've talked about the structure and stuff like that, where I think some of it is like, it doesn't play as well as it starts really, really strong. And I think some of it in the middle is a little bit weaker, but knockout performances, you know, really virtuoso filmmaking in many places, virtuoso team all around, the cinematography, the, you know, the music, everything in it. So, you know, I couldn't in good faith place it anywhere else any lower than this, but, you know, obviously still, like I said, a little conflicted about some of it, but it's my number 3. Your number 2.
My number 2 is Anna Karenina.
Okay.
I really, again, I have nothing negative to say about it. I love what he did. I think it was just a very daring approach to the material, and, you know, just a really incredible technical achievement that also is an incredible emotional experience as a movie, which, how often can you say that, right? I mean,
not very often.
Like, that's what Joe Wright is trying to do, right? Like, he is trying to dazzle you with his filmmaking skill, but also, you know, his movies they're melodramatic. You know, they do kind of tug at the heartstrings, and I really felt it all the way through that. Just incredible to look at, incredible acting, incredible production design. You know, it, like I said, with a lot of these, if this is your best movie, then you've done well. You know, you can retire, but don't make more movies. Make more movies like this. Absolutely love
You're only
it.
like 50,
really,
so make more movies.
yeah. He's a young, good-looking guy. Get out there and take it by the reins. But again, a movie that I probably never would have seen.
Yeah.
because I've been trying to read Russian literature my whole life and I have not even started it. So why would I watch this? And I enjoyed it so much. I did. It was one of those where I had to watch it multiple times before we did the show, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I've got a couple viewings of it under my belt, and I will absolutely see it again. And just the ballsiness of staging it the way he did, and like, let's make it super theatrical and then also have it be a kind of devastating movie by the end. Pretty incredible, and lots of stuff that he does so well in other movies like Pride and Prejudice, the ball scenes and stuff like that. The costuming, the camera movements, the actors putting the set together while the scene is taking place, stuff that just blows my mind. And I really, really like that movie a lot.
My number 2 is Pride and Prejudice. This was the hardest thing for me to do was number 1 and number 2, and they flip-flopped orders a ton of times for me. A ton of times for me. I settled on this one because I think, I will say this, of all Joe Wright's movies, the one I would probably rather watch the most is Pride and Prejudice, because I just think it's like a delightful, warm, happy ending, wildly romantic, just comfort movie, right? It's a movie you can put on like a Sunday afternoon and just be like, I feel pretty good. You know what I mean? When you're watching
maybe
it.
That's my problem. Not that I have a problem with it. I think it's a great movie. But because he's so good at the heavy dramatic stuff, and that movie doesn't really have it. That's maybe that's what kind of took that down a little bit for me.
Which totally, I mean, it's a preference thing, right? I mean, to me, it's like, I want, I want a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and so like, like I talk about these movies in the same breath, but Greta Gerwig's Little Women and this kind of fit into a similar bucket for me, which is just like, I just feel like good after I watch it, and I'm just like, love, like that's all that kind of stuff. And I just, it's funny and it's emotional and it's beautiful to look at. It's got all the things that I want from movies a lot of the time. So it's my number 2. It was very close to being the number 1. It was a very back and forth thing for me, but in the end I had to pick the number 1 I felt was like the Joe Wrightiest of Joe Wright. So that's why I picked what my number B. And I can assume we can both professionally, we both know what each number's number 1 is.
Yeah.
I'm guessing your number 1 was my number 3, Nick, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, my number 1 is Atonement, which a movie that I always loved. The reason why, when he said, let's do Joe Wright, I was like, yep, I really want to see that again. It's been a long time. I hadn't seen it since it came out. I think it's just it's an incredible movie. It's an absolutely shattering movie. It's one of my favorite endings that I've ever seen in any film. And I know that's Ian McEwan.
Ian McEwan, yeah. Ian McEwan?
No, I like that. That is the person, however his name is pronounced. That is who
the
wrote
author
that
of the book.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. You got to credit that to him. I just really, seeing it again, it's just like, this is right in my wheelhouse. I like serious movies. I like serious movies that are accessible. It's all of that. It's again, incredible performances. There are moments, we talked about, I talked about a little bit. There's Hitchcockian moments in it. There's this sweep to it that I think is wonderful. I love the self-reflexiveness of it. That's another thing that's kind of just a thing, personal taste wise. I just really like it a lot. Keira Knightley is incredible in this movie. Saoirse Ronan is really incredible in this movie. It's just such a good film. I was really hoping that it wouldn't, that it would hold up, and that I wouldn't look at it with older, more cynical eyes and be like, no, I can kind of see through this. And I do, I understand your misgivings about it, but I don't know. I kind of get past all of that. And I just really, I think it's a pretty incredible movie and my favorite of all of his. And I would say, the vast majority of his filmography is really, really good movies. This is just the best of the best for me.
And I'll say with Atonement, I liked it more this time than I liked it originally. I was even harsher on it the first time I saw it back when
glad I didn't
released.
Know you back then. We would have come to blows over Atonement in 2008.
Yeah. My number 1 is Anna Karenina. Huge
Great
surprise
choice.
For me before we started this miniseries. That would be number 1. I think it is the most Joe Wright of Joe Wright possible movies. It takes, I think we said this in the episode, but it takes this love he has for sort of the artifice, I think, of movie making, the calling out what the camera's doing, calling out what calling out the things that are in the shot, right? But making that part an endemic part of what the movie actually is. I think just brings all of his stuff together into what I'm looking for. It's also, again, like a wild swing, a crazy idea, right? I think like some of it born out of necessity, but sometimes the coolest things are born out of necessity, right? I mean, like we don't have the budget.
Works.
to make like this big sweeping epic. How can we do it differently? And coming up with this, there's so much ingenuity.
So much more distinctive because of doing it that way, right? Like there is a way that we talked about it on the episode, right? Like this story's been told on film so many times before, and you could just do a 6-hour miniseries or whatever, and shoot in Russia and like make this look very, very realistic. And what he does with it, I think, is so much more interesting than that. And works to the movie. Like you could also see a lesser film. I always think of like the better version and the worst version of things that I've seen, and like there is a very silly, very just over the top sort of theatrical version of this that wouldn't work at all. But like he's able to bring it together. He's able to thread that needle so well there. And it was very, very tough for me. I kind of wanted to call that number one also, but had to go with the sentimental favorite, which was Atonement. But they're both 4-star movies for sure.
Yeah, just fantastic. And the movie that I most will be like, I know you probably never heard of this movie, but you need to see it.
Everybody knows Atonement. Everybody
knows movies, knows what Atonement
movies
is.
knows Atonement.
Yes, absolutely. And Pride and Prejudice has this crazy, cultural cachet 20 years later. But Anna Karenina is one of those ones where no one knows about it really, no one remembers it, and it really is kind of like, I think, for me, his like masterpiece. And
much like Cyrano, and I think maybe even more so Cyrano, like these are movies that are totally ripe for rediscovery. Like, I'm not going to say it's going to be us. I'm not going to say somebody's going to be listening to the show like, oh, I need to see those movies now. But like, I could definitely see 10, 20, 30 years down the road, someone's just going to see this on a streaming service or something and be like, let me check that out. Whoa, that's kind of incredible. And I had no idea it even existed. So that it's got that in its favor also.
Absolutely. And I think it's so funny because my top 3, right, are all Keira Knightley starring movies from him. Obviously, they work incredibly well together. But just in general, like,
she is not retired either. So,
Saoirse Ronan
is also still working. So maybe we should get the band back together.
Yeah. My top 4 is because I think it's such a funny thing about his career. My top 4 are Anna Karenina, Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, and Cyrano, which are all period adaptation work, right? Of either a classic literature or, a very popular literature, because Atonement, obviously not an old book, like new at the time, pretty much when he's making the movie.
Yeah, a modern classic
movie, a modern classic book. Sorry, but that's what he does best. The thing is, like, the great thing he does is he takes these stories that could be the standard adaptation, period piece, period drama, whatever, and makes it something else. Gives it something else that I think elevates it above what most, kind of British director A, B, C, and D would do.
Right. And they are, as I was saying with Anna Karenina, right? Like everyone does it. Like there is a way to do it. Like there's a very, very safe way to do these. It's like, why? What is the reason? If you're going to adapt this very famous work of literature again, you got to give it something, you got to put some kind of a spin on it. Otherwise, you're just kind of doing something that someone else has done before. So I'm glad he is focused on classic, timeless works of literature like The Woman in the Window.
Yes, like
one of the greatest tomes ever penned by man. He really lends himself to the finest, the classics, really.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's really what just the classics. But yeah, that's the rankings.
He should have done the I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Somebody else grabbed that. Too bad.
Too bad. It would have been ripe for Joe Wright to take on.
I would watch a Tucker Max Joe Wright collab right now.
So quick, I'll run through them really fast. Number 9, Pan. Number 8, The Soloist. Number 7, Woman in the Window. Number 6, Hanna. Number 5, Darkest Hour. Number 4, Cyrano. Number 3, Atonement. Number 2, Pride and Prejudice. And number 1, Anna Karenina. So that's my list again. Do you want to read through your list really quick again, Nick?
Yeah. Mine is, let me just make sure I'm getting this right here. Oh, maybe I don't have it open anymore. I believe it was Pan, then The Soloist, then The Woman in the Window, then Darkest Hour, Pride and Prejudice, Hanna, Cyrano, Anna Karenina, Atonement.
That's right. Absolutely. All right, great. And that's Joe Wright. And we'll in 2 weeks, next week we'll be off, but in 2 weeks we'll be starting up with Peter Jackson, kicking off that filmography.
Our next episode is going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a blast.
I love Bad Taste so much. It's been a long time since I've seen it,
and it's gonna be
not have fun
like
with that
80
movie?
It's like 80 minutes long.
Yep.
So we're gonna breeze through that thing.
Nice change of pace from the lugubrious, but well-paced Joe Wright movies.
Yes, but we're going to a whole different ball of wax for at least the first couple,
From
first set of
Cyrano
films.
to Bad Taste is such a cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the.
I mean, from Cyrano to the first 4-5 movies of his
my
of his
Spotify
career.
playlist kind of work like that too, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be great.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to dive into a filmmaker that I absolutely love, some movies that I absolutely love, some movies that I haven't revisited in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't seen any of those early movies in a very long time. You know, I kind of watched them all after Lord of the Rings came out because I was like, who's Peter Jackson? Like, that's basically what happened to me. And I watched all those movies and really dug them, you know, in varying degrees. But it's been a really long time since I watched them, you know, and even the post Lord of the Rings stuff, it's been a very long time since I watched those either. So it's going to be a fun filmography, some big movies. Obviously, we tried a new thing with Joe Wright, longer filmography, a bunch of movies we didn't know. Now we're trying even a new thing for us, which is talking about some really big movies that, unlike most of the movies we talk about on the show, a lot of people have talked about a lot of times.
Yes.
So, you know, we're going to be, you know, seeing if we can bring our own stuff to it. A lot of this stuff is, you know, the first year of the show, we're really sort of like figuring out what works and what doesn't, you know, and if we do this and we figure out that these big, huge movies, we don't really have a lot to bring to them and we'll talk about them, then we'll avoid doing them, you know, but if we...
Well, yeah, but I mean, the idea of talking about, you know, The Return of the King as a Peter Jackson movie, not just as,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely,
the
yes.
film that it is,
Yeah.
you know, the Tolkien adaptation, the, you know,
I think you're
Academy
absolutely-
Award-winning, huge, you know, a lot of people's favorite movie.
Yeah.
But, like, let's look at it in the context of all the other stuff that this particular guy who started his career, you know, chopping off heads and, you know, with a bunch of latex and shit,
Yeah.
you know, that guy's movie, I think it'll be interesting.
I think so too, and I
context.
think you will see a very clear line between those schlockfest movies and what Lord of the Rings does. I think I think that's going to be fascinating, right? Because this is the first filmmaker we've really done who started small and got huge, right? Instead of, you know, Kaczynski's a guy who like started huge and like never went anywhere else.
And started like as small as you can get and got as huge as you can get, right?
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
the most extreme sort of swing from one to the other.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be fascinating, right? So I'm very much looking forward to
Good
that.
choice, listeners.
Good choice, listeners. Good voting.
It was one of the ones where I was like, oh no, please don't pick that one. It was definitely not like one of the ones I was cringing about. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. And then after that, it'll be Nick's pick for our next director, and we'll announce that when we get near the end of the Peter Jackson series. But until then, make sure you subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice. Please rate and review us as well. There you can find the videos also in the podcasts on intrepidfilmographers.substack.com. If you sign up, subscribe there, you'll get the podcasts. You can put them in whatever feed, whatever podcast, you know, catcher you use, and also you'll get emails when the podcasts come out and stuff like that. So you know, so follow us on there. And yeah, we'll see you next time for Peter Jackson. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's listening. Be good to one another. Later.